The message came on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. Park Tae-ho stood alone in his office aboard the UES Perseverance, watching the alien symbols scroll across his screen. The translation software worked hard to convert them into something humans could understand. When it finished, Tae-ho read the message 3 times. Then he read it again. Humanity was being summoned. The Galactic Council, a group of 12 ancient alien species, had finally noticed the young civilization from the small blue planet. For 80 years, humans had been spreading across the stars. They had built colonies on 17 worlds. They had made ships that could travel faster than light. They had done things that other species said were impossible. Now the old powers of the galaxy wanted to talk. Tae-ho pressed a button on his desk. "Captain Kim, please come to my office. Bring Dr. Han and Lieutenant Choi." He was 53 years old. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face carried the lines of a man who had seen too much. Before he became a diplomat, Tae-ho had been a soldier. He had fought in the resource wars on Earth. He had lost friends, brothers, and nearly his own life. When humanity finally united and reached for the stars, Tae-ho put down his weapons and picked up words instead. Words, he had learned, could be sharper than any blade. The door opened, and 3 people walked in. Captain Kim Yuna was a tall woman with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She commanded the Perseverance with an iron will and a steady hand. Behind her came Dr. Han Minji, their xenobiologist. Minji was younger than the others, barely 30, but her mind was one of the sharpest in the fleet. Last came Lieutenant Choi Sun-woo, head of security. Sun-woo was a quiet man with broad shoulders and careful eyes. He had a wife and daughter waiting for him back on Earth. They all had someone waiting for them back on Earth. "Read this," Tae-ho said, turning the screen toward them. Yuna read it first. Her expression did not change, but her hands tightened into fists. Minji read it next, and her face went pale. Sun-woo simply nodded, as if he had been expecting this all along. The message was simple. The Galactic Council demanded that representatives from Earth appear before them for a compliance hearing. Humanity would be judged. Their expansion would be evaluated. Their right to exist among the stars would be decided by beings who had sailed between worlds when humans still lived in caves. "They want to put us on trial," Yuna said. Her voice was cold. "They want to control us," Minji added. "I have read about the Council in our databases. They have done this before. Any species that grows too fast, that refuses to follow their rules, gets punished." "What kind of punishment?" Sun-woo asked. Minji looked at him. "The kind where entire civilizations disappear from history." The room was silent for a long moment. Outside the window, stars burned in the endless black of space. Each one of those stars might have planets. Each planet might have life. And somewhere out there, ancient beings had decided that humanity was a problem that needed to be solved. Tae-ho turned back to the window. "We have a choice," he said slowly. "We can ignore this summons. We can hide in our corner of the galaxy and hope they forget about us. Or we can go. We can face them. We can show them what humanity really is." "If we ignore them, they will come for us," Yuna said. "Their fleets are larger than ours. Their technology is older and more advanced. We cannot win a war against them. Not yet." "Then we go," Tae-ho said. He turned to face his team. "We go, and we speak for our entire species. We tell them who we are. We tell them what we have survived. And we make them understand that we will not be broken." Minji stepped forward. "Ambassador, the journey to Nexus Prime takes 6 months through normal space lanes. But there is another way. The Corridor of Storms." Yuna's eyes widened. "No one uses that route. The gravitational forces would tear most ships apart." "Most ships," Minji agreed. "But not human ships. We build our vessels stronger than we need to. We always have. If we take the corridor, we can reach Nexus Prime in 3 months." Sunwoo smiled for the first time. We arrive early. We arrive through a route they think is impossible. We show them from the very beginning that humans do not follow the rules. Taiho nodded slowly. This was good. This was the human way. When others said something could not be done, humans did it anyway. When others built walls, humans found ways around them. When others tried to hold them down, humans stood up and pushed back. Prepare the ship, Taiho said. Select our best crew. We leave in 48 hours. Yuna saluted and left to give orders. Minji hurried to gather her research materials. Sunwoo remained behind for a moment, looking at Taiho with an unreadable expression. Ambassador, he said quietly, do you think we can actually change their minds? These beings have ruled the galaxy for millions of years. Why would they listen to us? Taiho walked to his desk and picked up an old photograph. It showed a younger version of himself, standing with his squad during the resource wars. Most of those men and women were dead now. They had died fighting for a planet that was running out of everything. They had died so that others could live. Because that is what humans do, Lieutenant. We make the impossible possible. We survive when we should die. We hope when we should despair. He set the photo down. And we never, ever give up. Sunwoo nodded once, then left to prepare his security team. Alone again. Taiho looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, ancient powers were waiting to judge humanity. They expected a young species, frightened and ready to submit. They expected easy prey. They were going to be very surprised. 2 days later, the UES Perseverance entered the corridor of storms. The ship shook and groaned as impossible forces tore at its hull. Warning lights flashed. Crew members held on to whatever they could find. But the ship held. The ship always held. Humanity was coming to face its judgment, and humanity was not afraid. The Perseverance burst out of the corridor of storms like a bullet from a gun. Warning signals screamed across Nexus Prime. Alien ships scattered in every direction. No vessel had ever survived that route. No species had ever been foolish enough to try. Yet here was a human ship, trailing energy like a comet's tail, flying straight toward the heart of galactic civilization. On the bridge, Captain Kim Yuna allowed herself a small smile. All stations report, she called out. The answers came back one by one. Minor damage to the outer hull. Some burned circuits that could be repaired. 3 crew members with broken bones from the rough journey. But the ship was whole. The ship was here. Ambassador Taiho to the bridge, Yuna said into the communication system. Taiho arrived a few minutes later, still straightening his formal uniform. Through the main window, he saw Nexus Prime for the first time. It was enormous. The station was the size of a small moon, built from metals and crystals that glowed with inner light. Thousands of ships floated around it like fish around a reef. Each ship belonged to a different species. Each species had been traveling the stars while humanity was still learning to use fire. "It is beautiful," Minji whispered. She had come to the bridge with her recording equipment, documenting everything for the history books. "It is old," Taiho replied, "and old things often become fragile." The communication system crackled to life. An alien voice spoke in a language of clicks and hums. The translation software converted it to human speech. "Human vessel, you have used a forbidden travel route. Explain your actions immediately." Yuna looked at Taiho. He nodded for her to respond. "This is Captain Kim Yuna of the UES Perseverance. We were not aware that the route was forbidden. Our invitation said nothing about which paths we could use." She paused. "We simply chose the fastest way." There was silence on the other end. Then a different voice spoke, deeper and more commanding. "You are expected. Proceed to Docking Bay 7. The Council will see you tomorrow." The line went dead. Sunwoo stepped up beside Taiho. "They sound angry." "Good," Tejo said. Angry people make mistakes. The Perseverance docked at the station 2 hours later. When the airlock opened, a group of alien guards was waiting for them. The guards belonged to a species called the Throne. They were tall beings made of living crystal, their bodies sharp and angular, their eyes like polished gems. They said nothing. They simply turned and began walking, expecting the humans to follow. Tejo led his delegation through the halls of Nexus Prime. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small. The ceilings were impossibly high. The corridors were wide enough for giants. Strange lights floated in the air, casting shadows that moved on their own. Species of every shape and size passed by, some walking, some floating, some crawling on too many legs. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. "They are looking at us like we are insects," Minji said quietly. "Let them look," Tejo replied. "Insects can bring down kingdoms if there are enough of them." They were taken to their quarters, a small section of the station set aside for visiting species. The rooms were comfortable but plain. It was clear that the council did not think much of their new guests. That night, Minji worked on her computer while the others tried to rest. She had spent months studying the Galactic Council, learning about each species and their history. Now she dug deeper, searching through the station's public databases for anything useful. What she found made her blood run cold. "Ambassador," she said, calling Tejo into her room. "You need to see this." Tejo looked at the screen. It showed records of dozens of species, each one labeled with dates and status reports. Most of them were marked as contained or reduced. A few were marked as extinct. "These are species like us," Minji explained. "Young civilizations that grew too fast. The council decided they were threats. They were given a choice: accept restrictions or face consequences." "What kind of restrictions?" Tejo asked. "Everything. Limits on population growth, bans on certain technologies, forced removal from colony worlds." Minji scrolled through the records. One species refused, the Keth. They were proud warriors who would not bow to anyone. The council destroyed their home world. Their entire civilization was erased. Now they are just a footnote in a database. Tejo stared at the screen for a long time. Outside the window, the lights of Nexus Prime glittered like false stars. "They mean to do the same to us," he said finally. "Yes," Minji agreed. "They see us as a threat. We expand too quickly. We adapt too easily. We fight too well. They want to break us before we become too strong to break." Tejo turned away from the screen. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something dangerous. "Then we must change the game," he said. "They expect us to defend ourselves. They expect us to argue and plead and beg for mercy. That is what every other species has done. That is what they are prepared for." "What do you suggest?" Minji asked. "We do not defend. We do not argue. We attack." Tejo walked to the window. "We show them that humanity is not just another young species waiting to be controlled. We show them something they have not seen in a million years." "What is that?" Tejo smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "A species that is not afraid of them." He left Minji to her research and returned to his own room, but he did not sleep. He spent the night writing his speech, choosing each word like a soldier choosing weapons before battle. Tomorrow, humanity would face its judges. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what humans were made of, and nothing would ever be the same again. The grand chamber was built to frighten. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. The walls were covered with the symbols of 12 ancient species, each one marking a civilization older than human memory. Seats carved from stone and crystal and materials that had no name rose in circles around a central platform. Thousands of alien beings filled those seats, watching in silence as the human delegation walked into the room. Park Tae-ho walked at the front, his back straight and his head held high. Behind him came Captain Yuna, Dr. Minji, and Lieutenant Sunwoo, 4 humans standing before the collected power of a galaxy. They looked very small, but they did not look afraid. At the highest point of the chamber sat the High Arbiter, a being called Kalos. He belonged to the Valori, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His body was made of light that constantly shifted and changed, sometimes solid, sometimes like smoke. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber without effort. "Humans of Earth," Kalos said, "you have been summoned to answer for your actions. You will listen to the charges against you. You will respond when permitted. You will accept the judgment of this council." Tae-ho said nothing. He simply stood and waited. The first accuser rose from the seats. He was a throne, the same crystal species that had served as their guards. His body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. "In 80 years, humanity has colonized 17 worlds," the throne said. "This is a violation of natural order. Young species should spend centuries establishing themselves before expanding. Humans have spread like a disease, claiming territory without thought for the consequences." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The second accuser was different. She belonged to the Morath, a hive-mind species that shared one consciousness across billions of bodies. When she spoke, her voice had a strange echo, as if many beings were speaking at once. "Humans have developed weapons," the Morath said. "When they first achieved space travel, they promised peace. They said their wars were behind them, but they built warships anyway. They created weapons that could destroy planets. They cannot be trusted with such power." More murmurs, more agreement. One by one, the accusers spoke. The charges piled up like stones on a grave. Humanity had uplifted 3 primitive species, teaching them technology they were not ready for. This was forbidden. Only the Council could decide when a species was ready to join galactic civilization. Humanity bred too quickly. Their population had doubled since achieving space travel. If allowed to continue, they would outnumber the older species within centuries. Humanity refused to share their technology. They kept secrets from the galaxy. They developed new sciences without permission. They acted as if they answered to no one. Through it all, Tae-ho remained silent. Yuna stood beside him with her hands clasped behind her back, her face like stone. Minji recorded everything, her fingers trembling slightly on her equipment. Sunwoo watched the guards posted around the chamber, counting them, measuring distances, planning escape routes he hoped they would never need. Finally, the accusations ended. High Arbiter Kalos leaned forward, his light form flickering. "These are the charges against your species, human. You have heard them. Now you will hear our judgment." Tae-ho raised his hand. "I have not yet been permitted to speak." Silence fell over the chamber. No one interrupted the High Arbiter. No one dared. Kalos stared at Tae-ho for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. "You may speak, human, but choose your words carefully. They may be the last your species ever speaks freely." Tae-ho took a step forward. His shoes echoed on the stone floor. "I will not defend against these charges today," he said. "I need time to prepare a proper response. The accusations are many, and humanity deserves a fair hearing." The throne accuser made an angry sound. "You wish to delay? This is a trick." "Humans are always full of tricks." "It is not a trick," Tae-ho replied calmly. "It is justice. You have taken thousands of years to judge us. Surely you can spare a few more hours to hear our answer." Kalos consulted with the other council leaders. Finally, he turned back to Tae-ho. "You will have until tomorrow. When the light cycle begins again, you will speak, and then you will accept whatever the council decides." Taeho bowed his head slightly. Thank you, High Arbiter. The human delegation was escorted out of the chamber. As they walked through the corridors back to their quarters, Sunwoo leaned close to Taeho. That was clever, he said quietly. You bought us time, but what will we do with it? Taeho did not answer until they were safely inside their rooms, away from listening devices and watching eyes. Then he gathered his team around him. They expect us to argue their charges point by point, he said. They expect us to beg for understanding. They have done this many times before. They know all the words that frightened species use when facing destruction. So, what do we say instead? Yuna asked. Taeho looked at each of them in turn. These were the best humanity had to offer. A soldier who had become a captain, a scientist who dreamed of understanding the universe, a warrior who fought to protect his family, and himself, a man who had learned that the right words at the right moment could change everything. We tell them the truth, he said. We tell them who we really are, not the species they think they see, not the young civilization they want to control. We show them the humanity that survived wars and plagues and disasters. We show them the humanity that never gives up, never surrenders, never stops fighting for tomorrow. He walked to the window and looked out at the endless stars. Tomorrow we do not defend ourselves. Tomorrow we make them afraid of us. The others exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they nodded. Tomorrow would change everything. Sleep would not come. The station's lights had dimmed to simulate night, but the human delegation remained awake. Each of them dealt with the waiting in their own way. Each of them thought about what tomorrow would bring. Captain Kim Yuna stood on the observation deck, looking out at the fleet of alien ships that surrounded Nexus Prime. She counted them out of habit. Hundreds of warships from a dozen species. Any one of those fleets could destroy Earth's entire navy. Together, they could wipe humanity from existence in a matter of days. But Yuna was not thinking about defeat. She was thinking about a story her grandmother had told her when she was young. It was about Admiral Yi, who had faced an enemy fleet of hundreds with only 13 ships. Everyone said victory was impossible. Admiral Yi won anyway. Humans had always done impossible things. The door behind her opened. Taeho walked in, carrying 2 cups of tea. Real tea from Earth, brought all this way across the stars. He handed 1 cup to Yuna and stood beside her at the window. You should rest, Yuna said. So should you, Taeho replied. Yet here we both are. They drank their tea in comfortable silence. They had known each other for 15 years. They did not need many words. Are you afraid? Yuna asked finally. Taeho considered the question. I am afraid of failing, he said. I am afraid of saying the wrong words, of making a mistake that dooms our entire species. But I am not afraid of them. He nodded toward the alien ships. I have faced worse. Yuna smiled slightly. You are lying. You have never faced anything worse than this. True, Taeho admitted. But I have faced things I thought I could not survive, and I survived anyway. That is the human way. In another part of their quarters, Dr. Han Minji worked at her computer. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she could not stop. The database she had found earlier held more secrets, and she needed to understand them all before morning. What she discovered painted a terrifying picture. The Galactic Council had existed for over 2 million years. In that time, more than 300 young species had been brought before them for judgment. Only 40 still existed. The rest had been destroyed, contained, or slowly faded away under the weight of Council restrictions. But there was something else, something hidden deeper in the records. Not every species had accepted their fate quietly. A few had fought back. The Keth, the warrior race that had been destroyed, had actually won several battles against Council forces before being overwhelmed. Another species, the Ven, had tried a different approach. They had accepted the restrictions publicly while secretly working to preserve their culture and strength. They were still on the council, technically free, but they had never regained their former glory. Minji kept digging. She found references to prophecies and fears that the council leaders discussed only among themselves. They spoke of a species that would one day rise to challenge them, a species that could not be broken, a species that would bring change to a galaxy that had remained the same for millions of years. They called this species the Catalyst. Minji sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. The council was not just afraid of what humanity had done. They were afraid of what humanity might become. She needed to tell Taiho. In the smallest room of their quarters, Lieutenant Choi Sunwoo sat on his bed with a photograph in his hands. It showed his wife Jimin holding their daughter Bora on the day she was born. Bora was 3 years old now. She had her mother's smile and her father's stubborn chin. Sunwoo had joined the military when he was 18. He had fought in conflicts on 3 different worlds. He had killed enemies and watched friends die. He had done terrible things in the name of protecting humanity. But when he looked at that photograph, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the little girl with the bright eyes who called him Appa and laughed when he picked her up and spun her around. He was here, at the edge of everything, so that Bora could grow up in a universe where humans were free, where no alien council could tell her what she could become or how far she could reach. Tomorrow, the fate of his daughter's future would be decided. Sunwoo put away the photograph and began checking his weapons. Whatever happened in that chamber, he would be ready. Near midnight, the delegation gathered in Taiho's room. Minji shared what she had discovered. The prophecy of the Catalyst, the Council's hidden fears, the pattern of destruction that had repeated for millions of years. They will never accept us as equals, Minji concluded. No matter what we say, no matter how we argue, they have already decided that we must be controlled or destroyed. Taiho nodded slowly. Then we do not try to change their minds. We speak over their heads. We speak to everyone else. What do you mean? Yuna asked. The Council controls the galaxy through fear. Every species believes they have no choice but to obey. But what if we show them another way? What if we prove that the Council can be defied? Sunwoo understood first. You want to inspire rebellion. I want to inspire hope, Taiho corrected. Hope is more dangerous than rebellion. Hope spreads. Hope cannot be killed with weapons. Hope changes everything. He looked at his team, his friends, his family, here at the end of all things. Tomorrow I will speak to the galaxy. I will tell them what humanity truly is. And I will plant a seed that the Council can never destroy, no matter what they do to us. The night passed slowly. Each of them prepared in their own way. Each of them thought about home and the people waiting for them there. And when the lights of Nexus Prime brightened to signal morning, the human delegation walked out to face their judgment. They walked together. They walked unafraid. The grand chamber was full. Every seat was taken. Holographic projections floated in the air, broadcasting the proceedings to trillions of beings across the galaxy. This was the moment the Council had prepared for. This was the day humanity would be judged, contained, and forgotten like so many species before them. Ambassador Park Taiho walked to the center of the chamber alone. His team stood at the edge of the platform, watching. The entire galaxy was watching. High Arbiter Kalos rose from his throne. His light form pulsed with cold authority. Human, you have heard the charges against your species. You have been given time to prepare your response. Speak now, and know that these words will determine the fate of your entire civilization. Taiho looked up at the High Arbiter. Then he looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him. He saw contempt. He saw boredom. He saw the absolute certainty of beings who believed they had already won. He smiled. "You call us young," he began. His voice was calm but carried to every corner of the chamber. "And you are correct. Compared to your ancient civilizations, humanity is barely a child. But you misunderstand what that means." He raised his hand, and a holographic display activated behind him. Images appeared, images from Earth's history. War, plague, natural disasters, cities in flames, people dying by the millions. "This is our history," Taiho said. "We have killed each other in wars that lasted centuries. We have created diseases that wiped out half our population. We have poisoned our own air and water. We have faced extinction not once, not twice, but dozens of times." The council members shifted uncomfortably. This was not what they expected. Accused species usually tried to present themselves in the best possible light. "And yet," Taiho continued, "we are still here." The images changed. Now they showed humans rebuilding, cities rising from ashes, doctors curing diseases, scientists solving problems that seemed impossible, people helping each other, feeding each other, protecting each other. Every time we fell, we got back up. Every time we faced destruction, we found a way to survive. You see our history of violence and call us dangerous. But you miss the truth, hidden in that violence." He paused, letting the silence fill the chamber. "We are impossible to kill." A murmur ran through the audience. Kalos raised a hand for silence. "You speak of survival," the High Arbiter said. "Many species have survived. This does not make you special." "No," Taiho agreed. "Survival alone does not make us special. What makes us special is what we do with our survival." He gestured, and the holographic display changed again. Now it showed human achievements. The first flight, the first step on the moon, the first colony on Mars, ships spreading across the galaxy. "In 80 years, we have colonized 17 worlds. You say this is too fast, but we do not know how to be slow. We do not know how to wait for permission. We do not know how to accept limits." The throne accuser stood up. "This is exactly the problem. You refuse to follow rules. You refuse to respect the natural order." "Your natural order," Taiho replied sharply, "not ours." He turned to address the entire chamber now, not just the council. "You have ruled this galaxy for 2 million years. In that time, how many species have you destroyed? How many civilizations have you crushed because they grew too fast, dreamed too big, refused to bow?" Silence. Heavy, dangerous silence. "I have seen your records," Taiho continued. 300 species brought before this council, over 250 destroyed or diminished to nothing. You call this justice. You call this order. But it is not justice. It is not order. It is fear. Kalos's form flickered with anger. "You dare accuse the council?" "I dare to speak the truth." Taiho's voice rose. "You are afraid. You have ruled for so long that you have forgotten what it means to struggle. You have become so powerful that you fear anything that might challenge that power. And when you see a species like humanity, a species that survives everything, that never gives up, that never stops reaching for more, you do not see potential partners. You see a threat." He stepped forward, his eyes burning with conviction. "You offer us a choice. Submit or be destroyed. Accept your restrictions or join the list of forgotten species. But I have not come here to accept your choices." The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Guards moved toward the platform. Sunwoo's hand went to his weapon, but Taiho raised his hand, and somehow the chamber fell quiet again. "I have come to offer you a choice instead." He activated his communicator. Aboard the Perseverance, Captain Yuna pressed a button. Across the galaxy, on every human colony, on every human ship, the broadcast began. Taiho's words were being heard by billions. "Humanity will not submit. Humanity will not be contained. We will continue to grow, to explore, to reach for the stars, and you cannot stop us. Kalos rose to his full height. You threaten the Galactic Council? I do not threaten. I simply tell you the truth. Taiho's voice was steady as stone. You can fight us. You can destroy our worlds and kill our people. But you will never break us, because that is what we are. We are the species that cannot be broken. He looked directly into the holographic projectors, speaking now to everyone watching across the galaxy. To every species who has been told they are too weak, too young, too small to matter. You are wrong. The Council wants you to believe you have no choice. But there is always a choice. You can stand up, you can fight back, you can be free. He turned back to Kalos. That is humanity's proclamation. We do not kneel, we do not break, and we do not stop. You can be our allies and share in our future, or you can stand in our way and become a memory. The chamber exploded into chaos. Council members shouted at each other. Species argued about what to do. Guards moved forward, then hesitated, unsure of their orders. And in the middle of it all, from the seats where the weakest species sat, someone began to clap. It was a Ven, one of the species that had been subjugated long ago. He stood and clapped, alone at first. Then another Ven joined him. Then a being from another species. Then another, not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough to signal that the old order was cracking. Taiho walked back to his delegation. Yuna was smiling. Minji had tears running down her face. Sunwoo stood at attention, pride shining in his eyes. What happens now? Minji whispered. Taiho watched the chaos spreading through the chamber. Species that had been silent for millennia were speaking up. Questions that had never been asked were being asked. Now, he said, everything changes. 6 months later, 3 species withdrew from the Council to sign treaties with Earth. Within 10 years, the Galactic Council dissolved completely. A new federation rose in its place, built on partnership instead of domination. Ambassador Park Taiho did not live to see all of it. He died peacefully aboard the Perseverance, surrounded by the people who loved him. But his words lived on, carved into the hull of every human ship, taught to every child on every human world. We do not kneel, we do not break, and we do not stop. Humanity had spoken, and the stars had listened.